uh, Thank you very much, Anastasia. So, first of all, I would like to give a brief introduction to HRC. So, HRC Humanity Research Consultancy is a UK-based consultancy and social enterprise based in the UK, specializing in anti-human trafficking and modern slavery. We provide services in training, research, investigation, and consultancy around different topics, including labor rights, social sustainability, sustainable supply chain, and also the transnational organized criminal activities in the scam industry. So it's my pleasure today to be here to be the moderator of this webinar. And I would like to invite Ami Sagif, the Senior Director from Humanity United, to give us a brief opening remark. So Ami, over to you.
Great, thank you. And thanks for having me here today. Not to be confused, Humanity United and Humanity Research Consultancy. I know our names are very similar, but we are very distinct organizations. Yeah, my name is Ami Sagif. I've been with Humanity United for about 12 years, running our work in forced labor and human trafficking in seafood supply chains. This is a US philanthropic foundation funded by the Omidyars, the founders of eBay. And yeah, so we've been working in seafood supply chains for a long time. And, you know, one thing that we were observing is there's so much effort in various parts of the supply chain, you know, in varying degrees, but we're not getting that comprehensive change that we're seeking. Why is that? I mean, there's tons of contributing reasons, but I think the thing that we've observed the most is that the business model is just fundamentally broken. The way that value is distributed down the chain is just a huge problem that isn't addressed, with supermarkets at the top of the chain and buyers receiving the lion's share of that value, and that trickling down, getting smaller and smaller until, for example, workers aren't getting paid. And the other thing we noticed is that when people talk about vessel owners, which is where a lot of the problems are happening, they talk about vessel owners as if this is a monolith, right? As if all vessel owners are the same, whether you're a giant 300 gross ton purse seiner or you're a 30 gross ton trawler. And that's obviously just not the case. You have large commercial vessels, you have, you know, vessels that are captained by people that have been in the business for generations and generations. And what we were seeing and hearing more and more from talking to vessel owners, from talking to workers, from talking to others, is the impacts on those vessel owners are not the same. Some are going bankrupt. Some have had to go back to captaining their ships. Some are committing suicide. These are serious issues, and we want to be able to address these things. And in order to do that, we have to understand what is happening with vessel owners. When we say vessel owners, what does that look like? How does that break down? And how do we set up a system where we can really durably address these problems and understand the various actors in the supply chain so we can address those issues? Lots more I can say, but let me pause there and hand back to you guys.
Thank you very much, Ami, for the opening. And to respond to that, yes, the vessel owners are really, I would say many of the different supply chain actors don't really know who their suppliers are. They know that, of course, their fishing harvests are from vessel owners somewhere in the world. However, they may not know who they're working with. They have no idea what kind of labor conditions, what kind of financial challenges, or basically what kind of realities their suppliers are facing and what kind of either social challenges, whether economic challenges or sustainability related challenges are rising from these collaboration. And this is why HRC together with Humanity United and Freedom Fund had designed this project, The Missing Piece to the Puzzle, profiling Taiwanese dozen water vessel owners for steering the system towards a more ethical fishing industry. So before most of the projects or most of the research, where we're looking at the term social sustainability, we think about human rights. We think about the fishers, migrant fishers, frontline fishermen who are working hard at high sea to harvest those fish and catch. However, in this project, we would like to briefly shift our focus onto the vessel owners, who are the employers of these fishers and who are often being, let's say, regarded as the exploiters, the bad guys in the fishing supply chain who are exploiting the fishers, who are not providing better living conditions, who are causing a lot of deaths or burdens or hardships on the fishers. However, during our research and during our engagement with many, many different supply chain actors in the past few years in different research, while we're engaging with these vessel owners, fishers, and other level of actors in the fishing supply chain, we realized that vessel owners, they are just normal people. They're just like fishers, they're just like traders, they're like any other actors in the supply chain. Most of them, they really want to have their work done. They want to make money, they want to sustain their businesses. And there are several challenges that are facing that are really banning them, prohibiting them from either sustaining their business or protect labor rights, protect the fishers that they work with. So for today, later on, Anastasia, our project officer, will give a more overall introduction to a project. So I'm going to stop here, but followed by Anastasia's presentation. Myself and our senior consultant at HRC, Eric Kasper, will give a presentation on the key findings of our report in the entire project. After that, we will come with a Q&A session where all of you are encouraged to engage, to ask questions, maybe not just to us, but to also share your questions with other participants in the room. And finally, our founder and director of HRC, Mina Zhang, will give us a closing remark, and that's going to be the end of the day. So thank you very much, and I'm gonna move on to Anastasia. So the room is yours, Anna.
Thank you. Just give me a second. I will put the my slides on. Yeah, so hello again, everyone. I'm Anastasia, a project officer at the Humanity Research Consultancy. And as the first presenter today, I would like to start by providing a brief introduction to the research design and context of our latest publication. As many of you already know, HRC is a social enterprise dedicated to ending modern slavery. The fishing industry quickly caught our attention as it is considered one of the most dangerous professions in the world. The risk of workers not having access to decent living conditions is especially high in the sector. We chose Taiwan as our research focus because it operates the second largest distant water fishing fleet in the world. This means that anyone involved in the global fishing industry is highly likely to encounter Taiwanese vessel at some point. As we explored the topic, we came across plenty of heavy criticism against the distant water fishing industry, some of which have even resulted in warning and sanctions. Numerous civil society organizations report on the forced labor at sea even till nowadays. Since 2020, the U.S. Department of Labor and the U.S. Department of the State Trafficking in Person report have classified Taiwan's fishing industry as engaging in exploitative practice. In this report, 14 pages of human rights violation documented severe mistreatment of migrant workers, including physical abuse, verbal abuse, passport confiscation, and excessive working hours of 18 to 20 hours per day. Beyond being listed by U.S. authority, Taiwanese vessels were also issued a yellow card warning by the EU in 2015 due to inadequate measure against illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing, commonly known as IUU. Recognizing the severity of this issue, the Taiwanese government initiated major reform, introducing what is commonly known as the Three Fishery Act to combat IUU. Although this reform have strengthened legal framework, improved industry management, and increased penalties for violations, leading to Taiwanese removal from the EU yellow card list, the country remains on the U.S. trafficking in person list. In reality, vessel owners who consider themselves as law-abiding citizens following the law claim to have improved conditions at sea. However, the reports from the media outlet and CSO continue to expose ongoing cases of exploitation. There is a clear research gap when it comes to understanding the challenges and difficulty faced at the vessel level, as this aspect remains largely unexplored. Many stakeholders struggle to grasp the reality on the front line, making it difficult for them to effectively engage with and address these issues. So we asked the question, if Taiwanese vessel owners and management officers, such as captain, chief engineers, in contrast to organized criminal syndicates, perceive themselves as a law-abiding citizen, then what hinders them from fostering an improved working environment for migrant fishermen? Our research takes a unique approach to this topic. Instead of solely examining the relationship between the vessel owner and fishermen, we take a broader perspective, analyzing where vessel owners are positioned within the supply chain and identifying systematic challenges that may prevent them from improving working conditions for migrant workers at sea. Ultimately, HRC aims to understand how labor rights can be effectively protected to ensure that no workers falls victim into modern slavery. To break this down, our research is guided by these 3 questions you can see on the screen: who, why, and what. The later 2 questions will be addressed in greater detail by my colleagues in the next presentation, and now I'm just going to go through them. First, who are the vessel owners and what is the operational style of their companies? The goal here is to establish a clear understanding of their identity, business structure, and how they operate. And second question is to uncover the root causes behind non-compliances with labor standard and the systematic factor that may drive this behavior. Finally, what are the key challenges and opportunity vessel owners face? We examine the structural, economic, regulatory factors that shape their decision-making and explore potential ways for improving labor conditions. These 3 questions basically form the foundation of our research, help us to gain a deeper understanding of the complexity within the industry. To answer our research question, we employ 3 distinct research methods: desk research, key informant interview, and ethnographic observation. This multi-method approach ensures a comprehensive understanding of the industry from different perspectives, helping us to capture both structural insight and lived experience. Through desk research, we analyze governmental open data from the Taiwanese government and also regional fishery management organization, as well as all available secondary source. This approach provides us with a foundational overview of industry, highlighting existing research and ongoing challenges. Our second method involves semi-structured interviews with 9 vessel owners, government official, and representative from association. These interviews allow us to gain first-hand insight into their perspective and constraint. I understand that at this point, some of this entity and their role in Taiwan's fishery governance might seem a little bit unclear or overwhelming, but I will clarify this in the later part of my presentation. Third, ethnographic observation allows us to witness the reality and deepen our understanding by engaging directly with migrant workers, the very people we aim to support in achieving dignified working conditions. Additionally, by attending conferences hosted by the Taiwanese Fishery Agency and Fishery Association, we gain valuable insight into the policy-making process and how key industry players respond to the labor right concern. By combining the desk research, stakeholder interviews, and real-world observation, we should ensure that our findings are grounded and multidimensional. So who exactly are those vessel owners? In Taiwan, distant water fishing is largely a generational livelihood. Many vessel owners inherit their profession from their family. For example, in Donggang, a well-known fishing port, one of the vessel owners we interviewed had told us that he had worked alongside his father just as he his father had worked with his grandfather. And if you look at the government issue awards for the outstanding fisherman list, you will notice a strong pattern that many of those recipients come from families with generations of experience in the fishing industry. In addition to operating their family vessels, some also diversify their investment into fishery-related industry, such as frozen industry or delivery service. As shown on the upper right graphic, in the graphic, you can see 86.6% of the Taiwan distant water vessel, they are long liner, a very common fishing method used to catch tuna. And pulling from the statistical data from the Taiwanese Fishery Agency, it reveals a clear pattern of the port specification based on the vessel type. In Donggang, a major southern port, small-scale tuna longliner dominate. And in Kaohsiung, Taiwan's third largest city, most vessels are larger scale tuna longliners, and those vessels are made of metal, have a larger capacity, and employ nearly twice as many workers compared to smaller vessels. Now that we have identified who the vessel owners are, I would like to shift our attention to the key forces that influence their decision and operation. First, domestic authority. Since fishing is an international industry, domestic regulatory bodies, they also play a crucial role in shaping the vessel owner's decision. And this authority are responsible for establishing legal framework, monitoring fishery management, and also providing financial support, such as fuel subsidy or vessel decommissioning programs. Secondly, in Taiwan, vessel owners also have already formed their various fishing associations to help them coordinate, cooperate, and negotiate within the industry. Beyond national regulation, international fishery governance also play a major role in shaping the industry. This governance body are responsible for allocating fishing quotas, regulating access to fishing grounds, and implementing sustainability policies to protect marine ecosystem. Next, we have trader, who hold significant power in the supply chain. They set fish price, control transshipment service, and ultimately determine profitability for vessel owner. And in Taiwan, major players like FCF or Starcase dominate this sector. Their influence extends beyond pricing. They also play a key role in shaping industry supply chain and determine the market access for vessel. Last but not least, export market. Whether or not vessel owner can sell their catch internationally depends on the import tariff set by the market, bilateral trade agreement which determine the market access and also the pricing regulation. This means that international trade prices don't just affect vessel owner indirectly, they directly impact their ability to remain competitive in the global market. As promised earlier, I will just give a 20-second intro to the Taiwanese governance framework in this industry. So on the national level, we have the fishery agency that mostly handling the administrative side. And given the specific features of this industry and also particular political situation in Taiwan, we have the Overseas Fishery Development Council, mostly handling the foreign affairs. And in the local level, we have Taiwan National Fishermen Association. They give the easy access to the vessel owners, to the local vessel owners. And on the right-hand side, you can see the 4 major industry associations. If you would like to know more, please read our publication. So, thank you for listening, and I hope to hear from your feedback and comment in the Q&A section. Without further ado, I will give the floor back to Sharlene.
Sorry, thank you very much, Anastasia. And I hope that this gives a thorough introduction to the purpose, methodology of our project. And also, thank you, Anastasia, for sharing the overall, the overview of Taiwan's distant water fishing industry. We think this is quite an important part of our project, as most people, they do know what kind of fish Taiwanese flag vessels are fishing. They have some understanding about the markets, about market dynamic, but what these vessel owners, their livelihood, the governance framework look like, and what really influences their decision making will be quite vague to a lot of the people outside of Taiwan. However, as Anastasia mentioned, Taiwan owns the world's second largest water fishing fleet. So to us, it's quite important for the people out there who are interacting or sourcing fish from Taiwan to really have a little understanding of what really affect these people working in Taiwan, affect the level of sustainability of their fish catch, what really affects their decision making on labor rights, and what could we all do together to really come up with a more sustainable distant water fishing supply chain for everyone. So next up, I'm gonna share my screen. Can everyone see my presentation okay? Thumbs up. Okay, perfect. So next up, myself and Eric Kasper, our senior consultant, is going to give a presentation on the key findings of our project, naming realities of Taiwan's distant water fishing industry, challenges for vessel owners, and labor rights. But before we delve into what the vessel owners are facing, let's come back to what the fishers are facing again. So as I'm sure a lot of you have already read numerous reports from different international organizations and media coverage on the human rights violations faced by the fishers. Taking Taiwan as an example, the distant water fishing migrant workers, they are subject to lower salaries and limited legal protection, limited health and insurance compared with other migrant workers in different sectors, such as the health sector, factory workers, and even coastal fishers. A lot of these migrant fishers are also experiencing exploitative recruitment journey, which this recruitment journey really led to lots of loans and debts accumulating on these fishers even before their employment on distant water fishing vessels in Taiwan. And we're going to come back to this recruitment journey in my presentation further down. So I'm going to share this case happened in last August in Taiwan. It's a distant water fishing vessel called Youfu. And this vessel, this case really showcased the vulnerability of the distant water fishers in Taiwan. So on this vessel, there were 10 fishers who have been deducted or actually withheld their salary for 15 months, totaling more than 80,000 US dollars from their employers. And this Yofu vessel is a tuna liner. What we know is that this vessel owner, because of the financial difficulties, he is filing a bankruptcy and he's initially unable to pay back all of the salary to his fishers. And fortunately, with the help from local and international CSOs and also some of the reporting of the media, these fishers on the 8th of August, they have successfully got repaid of all of their salary. However, before that, they have already been forced to work without any salary at high sea for 15 months, which to us is unacceptable. Of course, we're not not a kind of human rights violations against the fishers could be justified. And in this case, we could really see the limited power and limited negotiation bargaining power between fishers and their employers. However, let's take a look at the vessel owner in this case. This vessel owner is filing a bankruptcy. And why is he filing a bankruptcy? Of course, we could understand that he may, and he is actually facing lots of financial difficulties. And again, we are not justifying any sorts of illegal or illegitimate practice of this vessel owner. But we want to delve into this person's and these owners' decision making. What led to his decision to deduct or actually withhold the fisher's salary? What led to his bankruptcy? And why is he unable to sustain his business? And out there are more than 1,000 distant water fishing vessels in Taiwan. Each of these vessel owner may be enduring similar financial difficulties that may affect the labor rights of their fishers. And here we would like to take a look at what are the kind of challenges and realities these vessel owners are facing, and what can we do as part of the supply chain, all of us, to really support these vessel owners and support the fishers to enable a more sustainable, socially sustainable supply chain. Okay, so coming back to our key question that Anastasia had already shared previously, if Taiwanese vessel owner, in contrast to organized criminal syndicates, perceives themselves as law-abiding citizens, and a lot of them do want to do the right thing, a lot of them do want to have a more sustainable business, a lot of them do want to protect their fishers, then what hinders them from fostering an improved working environment for migrant fishermen? So we made this graph during our research. It's an illustration of the operating environment for Taiwanese vessel owners. And I'm going to use this graph to briefly introduce the realities and also different kinds of pressures squeezing the vessel owner's profit. And sorry for the kind of tiny words, but this graph is also available in our report. So if you'd like to have a copy, please refer to our report. Anastasia had already shared the link in the chat box. So in the graph, you could see that, of course, vessel owners, while they're operating their business, they will like to profit from their business. But there are several different factors that are limiting their profiting. At the same time, the operational cost of all kinds, for example, fuels, for example, the cost for meeting different regulations, and the cost for improving the labor rights, the living conditions, working conditions of the fishers are also squeezing the profit of the vessel owners. Vessel owners are also being squeezed by the limited fishing quota. So while vessel owners are operating their businesses, they could not just catch whatever amount of fish they like. All of the vessel owners are being allocated a specific quota, which allows them to fish, for example, 1,000 tons of tuna, 1,000 tons of another kinds of tuna at a specific fishing ground, which means even if they have the capacity, even if they have the time, they have the energy, they have the skill of operation to receive more fish catch, they're not able to exceed this fishing quota. This is to protect the overall maritime diversity and also prevent any sorts of IUU. However, we realized that in Taiwan, as there are too many vessels sharing the same amount of quota, a lot of fishing vessel owners are suffering from not being able to catch enough fish to sustain their businesses. And of course, all of this water fishing sector are supported by the government. In Taiwan, Taiwanese government do support the water fishing sector, but the limited support is also kind of restricting the vessel owner's capability to improve labor rights. So let's take a look at the 5 challenging realities faced by the vessel owners. First of all is the top 3 difficulties in sustaining their businesses. This I will give a more thorough introduction later on. Next is the gambling nature of the industry, the difficulties in ethical recruitment of migrant workers, which is really leading to significant human rights violations against the workers. Next, we have the limited fishing quota, which is I just shared. And finally, we have the vessel decommissioning policy in Taiwan, which support the vessels to really leave the industry to make sure that more vessels that are able to sustain themselves to remain in the market. But this kind of policy is also creating some financial pressure to some of the vessel owners. So first of all, the top 3 difficulties in sustaining the businesses. So almost all of the vessel owners that we interacted with have mentioned these 3 top difficulties, especially in the year of 2022 and 2023. And the difficult realities, these top 3 factors are really limiting the profits of the vessel owners, making a lot of them having problems to sustain their businesses. So first of all is that in 2022, Taiwan raised the minimum wage for water migrant workers from $450 to $550. We all agree that the migrant workers, migrant fishers, should be entitled to a higher salary. And still, even if there is a $100 raise per month of the salary of these migrant fishers, it's still significantly lower than the national standards set by the labor standard law in Taiwan. But let's say, so one migrant fishers would receive an additional $100 per month, which means a vessel owner would need to spend another $1,200 to hire one migrant fishers. For the tuna longliners, most of the vessels hired from 20 to 60 fishers, depending on the size and skills of their operation, which means these vessel owners will need to spend an additional $24,000 to $60,000 per year just for hiring migrant workers. And again, we agree that migrant fishers should be paid higher, but we also agree that this additional cost should be split within the entire supply chain instead of being bear solely by the vessel owners, especially when they are already bearing a lot of the pressures and a lot of the limited profit margin in the fishing supply chain. And next is the depreciation of the Japanese yen in 2023. So the Japanese fishing market is a very important exporting market of Taiwanese fishing harvest, which means a lot of the Taiwanese tuna longliner would sell their fishing harvest over to the Japanese market. And the Japanese yen depreciation also means that what the vessel owners in Taiwan are really gaining from their sale is being decreased. And next is the rising fuel cost since the Ukrainian and Russian war. In the past, most of the time, the fuel costs would occupy about 1/3 of the overall operational cost of the saltwater fishing vessels. However, nowadays, it goes up to more than half of the operational cost. Most of the fishing vessel owner would need to spend more than $600,000 to $1 million per year just to purchase fuel for their saltwater fishing vessel, which, as I guess we all agree, is could be really stressful for the vessel owners. And next, let's take a look at the gambling nature of the industry. So the saltwater fishing industry itself is being affected by many, many different factors. And we realize that the vessel owners are actually bearing the difficulties resulted from these factors. For example, the trading dynamics, the limited market, and the lack of bargaining power. Most of the vessel owners would be selling their fish catch to the traders. And the top buyers of the fish catch from Taiwanese flag vessels include FCF, Trimarine, Itochu in Japan, and also Fuxing Fisheries, which is one of the largest trader locally in Taiwan. So the traders, they not only purchase fish catches, they also facilitate the necessary paperwork for fish catch to enter different markets. They may negotiate with local custom and authorities on behalf of the vessel owners. And they may also coordinate transshipment services, which means these traders, they do know that the vessel owners are highly reliant on them, as the collaboration between the vessel owners and the traders are more than just purchasing fish catch. Their transshipment, their legal paperwork, the entrance of the market, all incorporated into one single collaboration package, which makes the vessel owners in Taiwan more reliant on the traders. And these large trading companies are also dominating the market. As they know that a vessel owner would need this collaboration with them, they have the power to purchase fish at a lower price. And so vessel owners here, we shared with us that they have extremely limited or even no power to negotiate the price of the fish catch that they got. And they also have limited knowledge of the final destination of their fish sale, which means, well, after they've sold the fish to the trader, they have no idea where these traders are going to bring their fish to. They have no idea how much money these traders would make after they sell their fish catch to elsewhere. This really creates the power imbalance between the vessel owners and the traders. One of the fishing vessel owner shared with us that their current bargaining power with the trader is zero. In the past, they could somewhat compare the prices between different traders and not necessarily only selling their fish cash to SCF. However, as larger international traders such as SCF is purchasing smaller traders, collaborating with smaller traders, nowadays, all of the interest really goes to these international traders, and these traders would always find ways to bring the market back under their control, resulting in a trader monopoly, which is really disadvantaging the vessel owners. And next, the limited markets. Taiwan's fisheries are long been suffering from the limited markets because of our limited political status, which also lead to the missing of trade agreements between Taiwan and other countries. So, for example, fish from Taiwan are subject to higher tariff in some of the key seafood market. In the USA and the EU. So if the Taiwanese vessel owners are selling their fish catch to the US markets or the EU markets, the tariff will range from 14% to 20%. But for Japan, they're only charging us for 3.5% of the tariff, which means most of the vessel owners, in order to sustain their profit, could only sell their fish to markets such as Japan. And in Japan, high-value fish such as sashimi and yellowfin tuna is largely limited to be sold into this single market. But at the moment, the situation in Japan is also affecting Taiwan's fish sale, as nowadays the younger generation in Japan are not really consuming as much high-value fish. They're not consuming as much sashimi as before, which means it's more difficult for the Taiwanese vessel owners to sell their fish to Japan. And as we have quite a limited market options, this could really affect the profits of the vessel owner. And as I mentioned, the political status and the trade agreement problem would really affect the profits. Let's take Argentine softfin squid in the EU and US market as an example. For countries having that trade agreement with EU and US market, they could sell a price at about 46.7 US dollars per kilo. But for Taiwan, the cost would be 56 US dollars, which is really limiting the export options and really placing Taiwanese fishing harvest at a very disadvantaged status in the market. And next, the vessel owners also shared with us that they're facing some difficulties in ethical recruitment of the migrant fishers. So the top labor issues that we have been witnessing, not just during this project period, but with in many other projects, other engagements with the local fishing authorities, local fishers, etc., they have been sharing with us that there are a lot of complaints and reports on the salary deduction and the debt bondages. And who is deducting the salary of the fishers and what caused these debt bondage? So most of fishers, before they even come to Taiwan, to cover the recruitment fees charged by their local brokers and the cost upfront to sustain their family livelihood before they receive the first salary that they got in Taiwan, they may borrow some money from their local brokers or a local loan company from the worker sending countries, their country of origin. And once they arrive in Taiwan, their salary may be deducted by their local brokers while they're sending and transferring money back to their home country, which means many of these vessel owners may have no idea or have no control over the debt bondage or the salary deduction of their workers. But because of this ongoing issues in Taiwan's fisheries, many vessel owners have been assumed or have been complained as the key exploiters, especially financial exploiters, against their workers. So let's take a look at how this unethical recruitment happened for all of the distant water migrant fishers. So most of fishers, before they come to Taiwan, they will go through a multi-layered recruitment route First of all, they're going to be going to their local mining agencies or local brokers. These brokers may charge them a certain amount of recruitment fee, may encourage them to borrow some money from them in order to sustain their family. Once these fishers have collaborated with these mining agencies locally, these local agencies will work with Taiwanese recruitment agencies, and these Taiwanese recruitment agencies will be the one who's introducing these fishers to actually start working with their employers, which means the fishers, without the help of the recruitment agencies, they have no idea how they could find a job. And for the Taiwanese vessel owners, with limited language capacity and connections in the worker sending country, without the help of the recruitment agencies, they have no idea how they're going to recruit and hire workers. And this lack of knowledge and transparency really creates gap and opportunities for the mining agencies, brokers, especially unethical ones, to exploit the fishers. So most of the migrant workers, as I mentioned, they would take loans from the local brokers. And once they arrive in Taiwan, their monthly salary would be deducted by these local brokers. And while love vessel owners, a lot of them without the language capacity, or maybe they just have limited understanding of the Taiwanese law, which required them to directly pay salary to the fishers. A lot of them would pay the entire salary to the recruitment agencies and rely on the recruitment agencies to be paying their workers, which means vessel owners, a lot of them are not really paying directly the salary to the fishers. And while this salary is going through recruitment agencies, recruitment agents, either Taiwanese one or the locals one in Indonesia, for example, have the opportunity to deduct the fisher's salary either through translating fee, administration fee, or just deducting them the salary from their previous loan or debt. And this is also creating what we called debt bondage against the fishers. We did mention this problem with the vessel owners, but unfortunately, a lot of vessel owners were telling us that they have no idea how they could solve the problem. They're more than happy to be the one who's borrowing money to the fishers to protect their families, to deal with the family livelihoods, and to prevent the fishers from being exploited from their local brokers. However, this money borrowing and salary deduction system or informal system would also be interpreted as debt bondage or salary deduction from the vessel owners, which means the vessel owners are really dealing with that kind of delicate relationship, financial relationship with their fishers. So this is the kind of difficulties that the vessel owners are facing in ethical recruitment. And we all agree that the unethical recruitment routes of migrant fishers is one of the top reasons why a lot of these fishers are not being treated humanely, and a lot of the why these fishers are not being able to receive their full protections of their human rights. But this comes back to our question, how could other supply chain actors, for example, the international traders, the international buyers, to really support or to really invest in their supply chain, to invest in the people that they work with, the suppliers, the vessel owners that they work with, perhaps to share a little more profit with their vessel owner, with the vessel owners that they work with, to ensure that the frontline workers, the fishers, are able to receive a higher human rights standards to make sure that they will not need to be debt bonded by their unethical local brokers in their home country. And next, I'm going to pass it on to Eric Kasper, who is going to cover the fishing quota issue and also the vessel decommissioning policy. So off to you, Eric.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me just share my screen. Okay. So as we mentioned before, one of the issues facing fishing vessel owners is the quotas. Regional Fisheries Management Organizations, RFMOs, set quotas for fish as part of a global fishing governance system. Quotas regulate the number of tons of particular fish species that can be caught in particular ecosystems. So there are different RFMOs for different ocean ecosystems for different types of fish. And the quotas are set based on fish sustainability, as well as the various countries' fishing capacity, taking into account the likelihood that fishers from a particular country will overfish. So more trustworthy fishing countries may be trusted with a bit higher quota. The result is that, as with most places in the world, quotas assigned to Taiwan have decreased over time, especially for some fish such as the Indian Ocean big-eye tuna, which you can see in this chart, decreased from 230 tons in 2023 to only 73 tons in 2024. So that quota for Taiwan is then distributed amongst all the vessels according to Taiwan's own system for distribution, meaning that each of the owners has to accept the quota that they're given, regardless of their particular capacities. All things being equal, quotas on the number of fish caught should serve to increase the fish price in global markets because it decreases the supply. However, because of many problems we've discussed about the supply chain, and in particular the growing market power of buyers and traders, fishers are not the ones who've been able to capture the value added of whatever higher prices might have come from limiting the supply through quotas. And the quotas are shared among so many vessels in the Taiwanese fleet that they cannot catch to their full capacities, making particular excursions to catch fish less lucrative. Owners with multiple vessels have to make strategic decisions about how many vessels to deploy, and this creates uncertainty and precarity for workers because they may have signed on to go on a certain number of trips, to fish for a certain amount of time, and in the end, not that many workers are needed if the ships don't go out as often. So in a purely economic way, you might think an owner who assesses that a fishing voyage will not cover costs or make a profit would simply exit the market or temporarily pause operations. But in reality, many owners, especially small ones, family-operated firms, need the income, even if it means losing money and increasing debt for a particular fishing excursion, which can further trap the owners in the market. So one of the things that Taiwan has tried to do is to manage the shrinking of the industry as quotas have diminished over time. So recognizing the historical trends, Taiwan has tried to encourage and manage the exit from the industry for many vessels and owners. Without intervention, too many firms compete so that too few of them can be profitable or sustainable. And under an unmanaged scenario, the biggest firms with the most efficient capacities might push out the smaller firms. And there's no guarantee that such an unmanaged reduction would lead to better economic, social, or sustainability conditions. Taiwan's policies have attempted to encourage technological innovation, better efficiency, more formal and transparent worker engagement, and a smooth transition out of the industry for those firms that lag behind. In particular, a vessel buyback program was started in 1991, which has led by 2010 to a reduction of 3,000 vessels. And that was a 30% reduction in capacity for large-scale tuna longliners. And this effectively removed many vessels that were outdated or damaged. However, the costs of that program, the fees that were paid to firms that exited the market, were then passed on to the firms that remained in the market. It was assumed that owners that remained would benefit from the reduced competition. However, the gains were not as significant as expected, and they were not realized effectively by the owners that remained. As a result, Many owners have taken on debt, which they carry to pay for the incentives that were given to the ones that left the market. And this has created a perverse disincentive for further market exit, because taking a decommissioning benefit might not cover the debt that the individual owner is under at the moment. And even though the 30% of reduction in capacity was achieved since the policies began in 1991, this total is only 16% of Taiwan's target reduction. So the policies were designed to lead to much more actors leaving the market, which hasn't happened. In the end, Taiwan's fishing policies have not eased the situation for owners and have in many ways perversely trapped them in the industry, further squeezing them along with the other supply chain actors. Industrial policy is inevitably about picking winners and losers. Managing the shrinking of the industry would allow the government to be intentional about who wins and who loses. For example, if the government wanted to protect smaller or family-owned vessels, particularly under the idea that maybe those would be more likely to be interested in taking care of workers or following sustainable practices, rather than leaving it up to the survival of the fittest in the market. However, the current industrial policy doesn't seem to be achieving anything like that, and we end up with a situation that's essentially an unmanaged reduction, leading to unhealthy competition between the actors that remain. There are some promising developments. In particular, the International Labour Organization, the ILO's Work in Fishing Convention, which is often called C188, sets standards for better working conditions, including issues such as worker cabin space and ventilation. So this is an international regulation that individual countries should implement in domestic law, which would then set these standards. Taiwan is still attempting to implement C188 in domestic law, and this is one of the areas where policy change might be achieved through civil society actors and various forms of advocacy. But at the moment, some owners have already seen compliance with this regulation as a way to become more competitive. Features such as air conditioning, Wi-Fi at sea, improved food and water services on board, and cameras for remote monitoring are becoming more common due to owner incentives, pressure from organized workers and advocates, and pressure from socially conscious supply chain actors. In our experience through this research, we see that many owners are willing to work with government to align policy incentives with effective fleet reduction and improvement of the remaining fleet. Some certification programs do exist, which might further incentivize owners to follow best practices if it translates to higher purchase price for their catch. There are certification programs such as the EU Catch Certificate and the Marine Stewardship Council Certificate, which help incentivize upgrades and improvements in working conditions. Pressure from CSOs, civil society organizations, labor unions in collaboration with owners seem to be helping to realize some improvements, such as better access to Wi-Fi and remote monitoring on vessels, which can support accountability for working conditions. And one of our other projects, we have been piloting remote monitoring and Wi-Fi at sea. And it does seem that this is an area where there could be some win-wins for workers and owners. Skilled workers do have real value, especially in a shrinking and competitive industry. So efforts to formalize and regulate fisher recruitment can align with owner interest to improve market power for workers, especially through unions, which support collective action and bargaining, collective bargaining. So these are things which are promising developments, but which will need to be further explored and experimented with through creative partnerships between workers, owners, government, and civil society to find a workable solution. Thank you. Sharlene, does anyone want to wrap up?
Yeah, thank you very much, Eric. And again, for everyone, because of the time constraint, we only have about 40 minutes to cover the key findings of this report. But in our report itself, we have more detailed description of all of the problems, all of the challenges, realities, and different let's say, experience testimonies of the vessel owner. So if you're interested to know more about what these vessel owners are really facing, please go through our report. And apart from the report, we have also published 3 separate briefings targeting different research questions that we have in this project. So if you don't have that much time to go through the entire report, please feel free to go through the briefings instead. And of course, we will encourage you to share this report and also the briefings with anyone that's interested in learning a bit more about the experience of the vessel owners to brainstorm, work out some more solutions to really come up with a more sustainable supply chain that could be supported throughout all of the actors instead of just the vessel owner, the employers of the fishers. So next on, we're going to move on to our QA session. And once again, you're welcome to raise your hands or start your audio and ask questions. Or if you like, so you're also welcome to share your questions in the chat box. We're going to read that out and answer your questions. Okay, so I could see Sophie have a question on whether or not the COVID-19 had kind of worsened the ethical recruitment situation of the migrant fishers, for example, the recruitment fee. I'm going to take that question first, but Eric, Mina, and Anastasia, if you have any other thoughts, please feel free to jump in. So in particular, migrant fishers, I wouldn't say their recruitment routes or situation has worsened after COVID-19 pandemic, but I would say there has been a lot of unsolved issues that had already existed before COVID and still remain unsolved after COVID. So, for example, between the Taiwanese government and the Indonesian government, there is a memorandum of understanding they're trying to work out all of the existing labor issues of the migrant fishers. For example, the salary deduction question and also the management towards the broker, both the formal ones and the informal ones. Unfortunately, this memorandum of understanding has not yet been finalized, and there's no proper partnership or document being signed between these two governments. And we believe that this memorandum of understanding, once signed, will really support both governments to properly manage the recruitment route, as this recruitment route is a cross-jurisdictional one. None single government or agency is able to really cover all of the problems and support all of the ongoing challenges that's in the recruitment routes faced by the fishers. And I would say in general, the travel bans posed by the resulted by the COVID-19 pandemic is definitely making a lot of the blue-collared or lower-skilled workers, especially in the worker-sending country, facing a little more financial difficulties. And we believe, and we also saw a lot of the workers, because of this, because of these challenges posed by COVID-19, they may become financially a little more desperate or become more desperate to go abroad to work after the pandemic, which means they may be a bit more vulnerable against either transnational organized criminal groups or unethical brokers or any sorts of fake job listings or just different kinds of job listing or job opportunities that may place them into a more vulnerable or disadvantaged stage. So that's something that we saw after the COVID-19 pandemic, but it's not specifically only towards the migrant fishers.
Yeah, maybe I will also add a little bit about just in Taiwan, because Taiwanese government did prohibit to have recruitment fees, but then the service fee is very much allowed, which is around $2,000 per year, that agencies are allowed to charge to workers, which is quite a weird situation because employers are the one who needs workers, but workers are the one who's actually paying for the recruitment fees or the service fee to the agency. So that's quite problematic on Taiwan side. On the other hand, also on Indonesian side, it's almost impossible to know the full situation because it depending on the migrant workers which Indonesian agents they rely on, they might have different treatment. And on top of that, not just the recruitment fee itself, but many of the workers from Indonesia at least, they have limited ability to access the official credit system. That means like it's really difficult for them to borrow money from the banks. So what happened is that they tend to try to borrow money from the recruitment agencies. Sometimes it could be agencies promoting this, like asking them to borrow. Sometimes it could be workers themselves wanting to borrow a fee before they even jump on the vessels. So that, of course, will become something that with high interest and really limited workers' ability to make free choices. So that's still a situation that before and after COVID. Thank you.
Thank you, Mina. And I hope that answers your question, Sophie. If there's no other follow-up on this question, I'm going to move on to the next. Okay, so Isabella has a question. It says, in, I believe it's 2019, Ministry of Agriculture, Taiwan. So for everyone's context, Ministry of Agriculture in Taiwan is the higher level agency that's managing the fisheries agency. So they set up laws to make it legal for migrant workers to pay recruitment fees working in distant water. Are the vessel owners aware of this, and does it reduce the risk of recruitment fee paid by migrant workers? In Taiwan, definitely yes, because in general, as Mina mentioned, recruitment fee it has already been banned, and most of the recruitment agencies they only charge service fee, even though we would like to argue that that's also a kind of recruitment fee. But for the vessel owners, there's no way for them to charge any sorts of recruitment fee from their fishers. However, that doesn't really address the issues where fishers are coming from their home country, and part of the recruitment route has begun in their home country, where in their home country, the informal brokers, the local manning agencies, even the legal manning agencies in Indonesia and the Philippines or other worker sending countries are still able to charge workers recruitment fee. And these recruitment fees could come up from different names, for example, visa application fee, health examination fee, or just a bunch of just some money to support this fisher, to support the family. And all of these could fall under the category of recruitment fee, even if they're not using the term recruitment fees. So it's great that Taiwanese government has come up with this policy to ban recruitment fee in Taiwan. But as Taiwan doesn't really have the authorities over the recruitment pathway in Indonesia and any other countries, we can't really ban another government or another countries from doing their things or allowing recruitment fees to happen. And it also comes back to the memorandum of understanding that I mentioned between the Taiwanese government and the Indonesian government. Without this understanding in place, there's no proper mechanisms for management towards the recruitment agencies from both sides of the recruitment routes. So I would say that's a still ongoing risk, and the policy in Taiwan had only slightly reduced the risk. Any other thoughts or questions?
Yes, Charlene, may I ask a question?
Hi, Sally.
Yes, I'm interested in what sort of mechanisms there are for the workers to be able to express their grievances right now. And what kind of support do they get from the government or from the buyers or from anywhere? Because that's the most important component of this. Without that, we won't be able to identify what's happening and also to find solutions for them.
Thank you very much, Sally. That's a really great question because we also heard similar concerns from the traders or other industry actors side saying there's no way for them to really know what's happening with the migrant workers. And as most of them would be outside of Taiwan, outside of the port states, outside of the flag states, they don't have that language capacity or connections to know what's going on. So to answer your questions, there is a general hotline called 1955 hotline for migrant workers to raise their complaints. So this hotline is designed for all of the migrant workers in Taiwan, not just for the fishers. However, for this hotline, it really requires like proper telephone or cell phone service, which means distance water fishers, while they're at sea, it's impossible for them to make phone call to this hotline. So that's one of the issues faced by the water fishers. And FCF have also worked with a church and NGOs on a grievance mechanism called Workers' Voice. So this Worker Voice initiative allows workers to access a online grievance form through a QR code that's available on their vessel. And on this online form, they could stay anonymous, put on their problems, their complaints, cases, and their contact info if they want to, and send it over to the church to have the church and CSO members support the problem solving. However, to access this online form, fishers will need connectivity at sea. So without satellite Wi-Fi, without internet connection, it's impossible for them to access this grievance mechanism. And if for example, the captains or the managing officers on the vessels are in charge or have their authorities over the internet service, the facilities on the vessel, that also means that they kind of hold the power to decide whether or not the fishers could make the complaint. And moving on to whether or not these complaints are being properly dealt with, we spoke with quite a lot of grievance receivers, especially the NGO side. So because of the language capacity, like most of the fishers, they speak Bahasa Indonesian. It really requires interpreters to support them in any sorts of complaint. But most of the interpreters hired by the Taiwanese government, yes, they do speak Indonesian. However, they may not have that knowledge about the local dialect or some of the terms that the fishers are using. These interpreters may be Indonesian, Chinese Indonesian, or Indonesian women married to Taiwanese men. They have long been living in Taiwan, and they may have limited language capacity when it comes to, for example, terms about labor rights or terms about this and water fishing. So that's also limiting the distance water fishers' ability to make complaints, which will need to be filled in by the CSO members. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, I do have a follow-up on that, and it involves the remediation part because the channels for remediation, have they been identified or determined? Because it's one thing to be able to access all the grievances, but it's another thing to be able to channel them correctly. And I'm sure the church, the Presbyterian Church, if I'm not mistaken, is trying its best to compile all these grievances. But then there would be limited, I don't know how much capacity they have to be able to contact agencies or embassies. I mean, these are migrant workers, and I think there would be cross-border activities that need to be entered into and investigations and all that. So what sort of cooperation are there between the countries involved, Indonesia and Taiwan, or Philippines and Taiwan, or even if an incident happens in another location and it's urgent, then it would involve some onshore support from the nearest port. And again, that's a big concern for the distant water fishing fleet because they're not always near shore, and we don't know where they are, and they could be in some territory that's really difficult to access and provide help for the crew.
So that's another great question, because in terms of the international collaboration, there's extremely limited options at the moment. There is one examples where in Taiwan there is an industry association called Squid and Surrey Association and Taiwan Tuna Longline Association. They're collaborating with a Indonesian-based workers organization called SBBI. So this Indonesia-based organization is supporting the return fishers to either deal with their legal cases or any sort of salary deduction or debt bondage that they have accumulated during their employment in Taiwan or in another country if they have been working in another country. And in terms of the remediation within Taiwan, most of the cases, if the dispute is related to financial salary questions, normally the local CSOs would support the fishers to negotiate with local government, their recruitment agent, and also their employers. So what the government will be doing is they're going to hold a mediation meeting, having different parties sort the problems out and identify, like, for example, how much money this fisher should receive and who should be in charge of repaying this amount of money. And in that case, we're of course happy that the fishers are able to be remediated. However, that's also kind of providing vessel owners a way to get away from the legal accountability, as some of the severe salary deduction, severe debt bondage, or exploitation could be identified as a case of human trafficking. But with that remediation process completed, remediation solved, the fishers would, most of them would choose not to place a charge against their employers, as they still want to continue working in Taiwan. And that would become a gray area or a loophole for some of the more unethical vessel owners to get away from the problem.
Okay, thank you. Very
you.
thorough answer.
Thank you. And I'm going to move on to the next question. I could see from Isabella, a quick follow-up question. As recruitment fee risk in Indonesia still exists, are there any interventions or solution that we will recommend? From our side, we would definitely recommend Taiwan's fisheries agency to really work properly with the Indonesian government to come up with a solution on how they could properly manage the entire recruitment routes. It could be through like proper documentations of the fishers recruitment journey, which agencies, which entities they're working with, and what are the recruitment agents or brokers that should be flagged and should not be continuing working as a recruiter. And we would also like to recommend the vessel owners to begin using the service provided by Taiwan called direct hiring. So this direct hiring system will really allow the vessel owners to hire the fishers directly without the intervention of the recruitment agencies. So if they're using this service provided by the Taiwanese government, the downside is that they will have to prepare off the documentations by themselves instead of having that services provided by the recruitment agencies. But that could also eliminate all of the chances for forced labor, salary reductions, debt bondage, and other indicators of forced labor during the recruitment of their workers.
Yeah, maybe I will add a little bit more here. So just for example, when we were walking around in Donggang, sometimes when the migrant fishermen were gathering, they might even use certain space that's provided by recruitment agencies, the one that they feel familiar and comfortable with. So it's just to say that, yes, majority of recruitment agencies are quite exploitative towards migrant worker. However, there are still some that they could have some trusted relationship. So in a sense, we encourage more dialogue between vessel owners and migrant workers, because migrant workers tend to understand better about different landscape of the market. So if the vessel owners are able to listen to migrant workers, especially unions, really kind of using the services from better recruitment agencies, that could already be a first start to decrease this kind of situation where migrant workers are being facing this unjust treatment by recruitment agencies.
Thank you, Mina. And Isabella, I hope that answers your question. I see we have about 7 minutes left, so I'm going to move on to the next question by Rawson. So, if migrant fishers do not speak Chinese, how is the operational safety on board, as required by national and international regulations, secured, if at all? Thank you, Rawson, for this important question, because this question actually highlights another incapability of the vessel owners. So yes, most vessel owners do not speak Bahasa Indonesian, and yes, most fishers do not speak Chinese. Which means these kind of operational training, safety training will need to be provided by someone who does speak Bahasa Indonesian. So it will also depend on who's in charge or who the vessel owners have decided that this how these training would be given. A lot of time it would be the recruitment agencies who are collaborating with this vessel owner be in charge of providing these information. So the recruitment agency, most of them have hired interpreters to properly communicate with the fishers. They will ask the interpreters to be the one who's either interpreting the documents or these regulations, or be the one who's providing the training. And some of the times it would be the fisheries agency having their officers, if they're doing any sorts of inspections on the vessels, they will also bring their own interpreters to provide additional information on regulations or all of the, for example, the points, the downside that they would like this vessel to improve. But in general, vessel owners rely on additional resources, such as recruitment agencies, such as external interpreters to train their fishers. And we visited quite a few vessels in Taiwan before, and we could see that a lot of vessel owners, they have translated those safety instructions into the language of the mother tongue of the fishers and post those safety regulations on their vessel, which is great. We highly recommend this practice. However, we also recognize that if the migrant fishers, they're at sea and they have any questions about these safety regulation, they may not immediately have anyone to ask, as the captain and the management officers may be Taiwanese or someone, or either Filipinos who do not speak Bahasa Indonesian. So again, we would like to highlight the need of connectivity again. Fishers will need to access either translation services, grievance services, or just in general, contact people out there to get what they need and to make sure that they're not being isolated at sea without any sorts of support, with or without an emergency.
Okay, I would also add a little bit briefly on this one. In the sense, it's kind of I would say like the laziness of Taiwanese government. Like around the world, basically, when you recruit migrant workers, some basic kind of language training is almost essential. For example, migrant workers, when they travel to Japan or Korea, there will be at least some basic language training. But coming to Taiwan and China is almost kind of the most like lowest hanging fruit, because there's no requirement in language, because Taiwanese government never really see migrant workers as workers who will stay and actually investing in them, but very much just like come and go. So there's no proper system in trying to helping people to adopt into a better safety environment. So that will be also an end goal that we very much we would love to see the Taiwanese government start asking some basic language requirement, because otherwise, as you pointed rightly, Rosen, that it's very dangerous, and we see lots of troubles and misunderstandings, fights even because of language gap. Yeah. Should I just continue to the closure, the closing remark?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I mean, we've gotten a lot of great questions about the worker-focused issues here. And again, as we've said, that is one of our major concerns. But the point of this research was to point out the issues faced by the owners themselves. So we can understand sort of from an outside lens, a high level lens. I mean, we can see that the owners are facing a lot of constraints. So given that there's such difficulties holding them accountable, we can assume that a lot of them are choosing to cut corners, right? So we're not trying to say that the owners are justified in doing what they're doing, but what we can say is if we could intervene in certain ways, we might want to, we can assume that they're under incentives currently to have weak onboard safety, to cut corners, right? So like Nina said, the Taiwanese government should really be doing something more to shape the conditions in the supply chain from the bottom and from the top. They can be doing a lot more. For example, one of the things we've been researching is Wi-Fi at sea. This would enable the workers to have much more access to complaint mechanisms, grievance mechanisms. It would allow Taiwanese inspectors to remotely inspect vessels that are in the middle of the sea for many months at a time. So these are the kinds of things we can start advocating for and pushing for. And to the extent that owners would like to be good faith actors, we can help them through negotiations to make such things like remote monitoring and Wi-Fi at sea to be part of contracts going forward. So, I mean, again, having that systemic view of how the owners fit into the wider systems should help us be able to start tackling some of these other issues, and watch this space, because we are doing other programs, other research projects focused more on the worker side of things. Thanks.
Yeah, so for the closing remark, I would just say a few things. The first one is that, as I mentioned briefly, that the Taiwanese fishing industry is very much on a downsizing trajectory. So naturally, the government is trying to kind of shrinking the whole industry, while we are here trying to push for the labor condition to be better. And the two things inherently can have some contradiction. So in the sense that that kind of make it much harder for us to push for the things we wish to see. However, the good thing is it could also be a more kind of a temporary situation. I think Sharlene, are you sharing your screen or like?
I think
you want to display
Anastasia,
it?
I think you're sharing the
Anastasia,
wrong
can you
page.
display that? Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's the first situation that we need to recognize. And also, the second situation is that while very much the focus is focusing on the vessel owner itself, in this research, we try to broaden it up to seeing the full supply chain, to understand that the dynamic is really beside just the kind of duel between vessel owners and fishermen. Because if we are only seeing this duel, then it's almost impossible to really resolve all the issue, the systemic issue. It has to include all the different stakeholders from the entire supply chain, the buyers, the traders, because they are the ones that's holding lots of power. Repeatedly, we are hearing vessel owners telling us that the fishing price hasn't changed for 20 years and even actually going down while all the costs is going up. In a sense that we understand that, yes, the price is not something they can negotiate with the larger buyers, but that's exactly how we see certain amount of vulnerabilities on those vessel owners, and they are pushing those vulnerabilities into the workers, which is in even worse situation. I would also like to emphasize that this is one of the first reports that really shine a light on who the vessel owners are. If you look into the detail of the report, we provide very detailed information on the sectors of vessel owners, the different structures, the scales they're operating. And so we really hope that this can be information that for many organizations to use and to engage more of the Taiwanese fishing sector, not to justify whatever vessel owner is doing, but to be able to engage them better and to help like-minded organizations to understand to how to address that in a more systemic way. Also, in this research, we emphasize both the government but also the market forces. And that's the reason why the supply chain element comes in, because the government can only do so much. The Taiwanese government, they're definitely not doing enough, and we are continue pushing them to have all kinds of regulations. But at the same time, through the market force, through the supply chain, there's different kind of pressures coming to vessel owners. And I would like to also emphasize that we have one of the final slides talking about an MSc and other kind of certificate systems. For us, they are definitely not enough. A lot of those certificates, they are limited more kind of looking at environmental elements only. But when it comes to labor, when it comes to human rights, they have very limited angle. In a sense, there are lots of reports already saying how many vessels that obtain certificates, but still having issues on them, that we fully recognize that. However, at the same time, we are seeing that the Taiwanese vessels, they operate from that mindset in the past that they can fish anywhere, they can use whoever workers they are. They are very much not even used to needing to report how much catch they are reporting, how much catch they are really actually getting. So we are coming from a background of vessel owners who are in the age of 60 years old, 70 years old, doesn't speak English, don't understand why they need to follow all this, and then start slowly adopting them into this new world that yes, there's regulation, there's quota, there's rules you have to follow, there's reason why you cannot shout at your workers, all these kind of new forces. So we want to try to use different ways, including the government, including the markets, trying to help them to adopt this new system, ultimately try to improve the condition of the worker. So I think the way forward is that this is, as we mentioned, one of the very first report that shine lights on vessel owners' situation, but we still have lots of research gaps that need to be closed, and lots of practices that we are trying to emphasize and trying to pioneer there, including, for example, Wi-Fi at sea, which we mentioned many times, including other kind of mechanisms that will really try to shift, really ultimately giving workers more bargaining powers and giving vessels more bargaining powers in front of bigger stakeholders as well. So we thank you so much for being here today and understanding and listening to the findings, and very much welcome you to share more of your thoughts or questions, and looking forward to have more collaborations in the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, everyone, and thank you so much, Mina, for the closing remark. So once again, we would encourage you to reach out to us to start more discussions, let us know your thoughts. And we also designed a post-webinar survey. So on the screen, you could see a QR code to the survey, to HRC's LinkedIn, and also our website. Please, if you have 3 minutes to spare, please do fill into our survey just to let us know your thoughts. You're also encouraged to reach out to myself and any other HRC member here to talk about any additional questions. And again, in chat box, we have link to the report and also our briefings. So you're also more than welcome to take a look. And again, thank you very much, everyone, for staying till the end and for engaging in our webinar. And thank you so much for all of the amazing questions all of you have raised. So yeah, that's the end of the webinar, and hopefully we could see each other soon again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sally.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you. Goodbye.